And then before we move any further, honestly, I'm gonna level everything against themselves. So I'm gonna bring all these levels down and then start with this piano texture. And then now let's apply our effects based off of this, and then we can hear how it reacts to every other sound we're gonna bring in. So now let's add some delay. It's pretty consistent for me. I'll just go to Fruity Delay 2 and add the widen preset. That's sounding nice and wide. And then the next thing I like to do is go to Lux Verb and kind of just tweak that to my liking. And then we can parallel process that just a little bit. And like that little nice tail end that it gives the melody. So if we turn off the effects and just listen for a second, it's like super dry and like really thin. And when we turn that on, it's just more lush and filling up more space. So now we can bring in the rest of the sounds, and if we do need to add more delay or reverb to a specific sound, we can do it from there. If I feel like manipulating a certain sound, we can do that. But again, I kind of like the way everything sounds already. Ollie did a really good job with this melody. So I'm gonna pan both of these textures away from each other. Panning is a really dope, subtle way to kind of just give your mix a little bit more vibrancy. Give those a little bit of stereo width too to really accentuate that panning. Now let's bring in this string texture. Now for this bell. So this is something I'd actually like to add a kind of unique effect to, and it's going to be just equalization. There's a sharp artifact that I want to kind of EQ out if I can. And then let's bring in these last two sounds, which is this wah effects and this box. So now let's briefly talk about equalization cascades, and that's basically just a very fancy way of saying that I EQ out low end and high end mud on as many tracks as I can to free up as much space as I can in my mixes. Is this the most necessary thing? No. Do I do it in every mix? No, but I figured I'd share the tip because it can be very valuable on a case-to-case basis, and I want to give you as many helpful things as I possibly can. You can take what you need from this workflow and leave anything you don't want to use. Like, you don't always have to set up signal flow. You don't always have to do a drum room verb, right? You can take whatever you want from this that's valuable for you and that you think is going to make your mixes better, and then just trap with that. Sometimes you're going to want to use the whole workflow. Other times you're not going to want to. It's fine. You know what I'm saying? But that being said, basically the entire process of the equalization cascade basically boils down to using this console EQ and just bringing it down at that 90 hertz cut all the way to 18 decibels, and then just do that for everything. And what that's going to do is subtly free up a lot of your low end space for things like your kick and your 808, right? So I'll do that on like pretty much all my melody sounds, and then on every drum sound that is not the kick or the 808. So I skipped over the bass because I'm not going to do it to the bass, and I'm not going to do it to the kick, so I skipped that too. And I also skipped over the 808, coming back to that main clap, then the hi-hat, accent snares, open hat, and shaker. And we will do a little bit of EQ to the kick as well as the 808, but first we have to get into leveling, and you'll see more about what I mean by that in a second. That being said, now we can get into actually leveling, and this all starts with the big three concept. I touched on it in that video a couple of weeks ago, which will be appearing on the screen now. And the whole reason I'm actually doing this video now is because I wanted to explain all of the mixing concepts we've covered over the last 2 months in an in-depth kind of like work through of everything. So like the clipper was covered in a video previously, big three concept was covered in a video previously, so on and so forth. So today I want to give you a very in-depth demonstration of that. And before we get any further, I should let you know what the big three concept is, and it's that it addresses the three things that are going to be the loudest in your mix or the most present. So it's all the low end, bass, 808, kick. That's like the first element of your big three. The second one is your main snare or main clap. So in this particular beat, it's going to be that clap right there. And then the third thing is your melody. It's going to be the most present, maybe not necessarily the most loud in terms of decibel, especially when it comes to the melody, because melodies have the ability to present as louder at lower decibel ranges because they cover a wider frequency range. So you really want to more so use the phrase more present as opposed to more loud, but let's go ahead and work through it so you can see what I mean. So let's start with the kick, and we'll turn on our buses so we can begin to level everything. So I do actually want that kick to push a little bit past 0. And since it's going to do that, I'm going to drag another clipper chain on there from my band for band mixer preset, which is basically just the same chain we set up. And then I'm just going to leave that on there without really changing the settings at all. And I do that because I like to clip in cascades. I like to take care of clipping before it gets to that pre-master and before it gets to that master, because I've just noticed it really gives it more of that punch. Cool. Now let's move on to that 808. I want this to be a little bit less loud than my kick, but still pretty damn loud. All right, now let's switch it out for this bass and do the same thing. Awesome. Let's bring back the 808, and now let's start leveling in this clap, which is going to be the second element of our big three, and it's going to be the second loudest thing in our mix. And I like to give my claps just a sprinkle of stereo, so I'll pan it just a little bit to break it out of that mono and then give it just a little bit of stereo. Why? I just kind of like the texture it gives it. There's no real scientific reason. And now that we have all of that leveled, we can bring in the melody. And since all the melodies are in one composite track already, we'll just level the entire bus against the other two elements of our big three. All right, I really like that. So from there, it's really as simple as leveling everything else in, keeping in mind that you want your big three, you need your big three to still be the most present thing. So for example, these perks, you want them to be loud and present and driving the bounce, absolutely, but you don't want them to overpower any of the other three elements. So let's get into it. Now let's bring in that accent snare.